Massive holdings business Embracer Group has recently acquired the rights to The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Still, plans are already in the works for spin-off films, starring the likes of Gandalf, Aragorn, Gollum, and others from the franchise. In what ways will the sequel impact the main movie, and who will be added in the second season? Stay tuned to find out. Let's begin with Lord of the Rings. New owners are already talking about Gandalf and Aragorn spin-off movies. Embracer stated in its acquisition announcement that it is eager to explore movie tie-ins for some well-known characters, in addition to other upcoming Lord of the Rings projects such as Amazon's The Rings of Power and the War of the Rohirrim anime film. Other possibilities include exploring additional films based on iconic characters such as Gandalf, Aragorn, Gollum, Galadriel, Éowyn, and other characters from J.R.R. Tolkien's literary works. Embracer explained, it will also continue to provide new opportunities for fans to explore this fictive world through merchandising and other experiences. According to the company, Embracer's acquisition of Middle-earth Enterprises grants it worldwide rights to films, video games, board games, merchandising, theme parks, and stage productions based on J.R.R. Tolkien's literary works. The majority of Lord of the Rings media released in the last few decades came from these rights, which the Saul Zaentz company previously owned, via licensing deals that resulted in Peter Jackson's film trilogies, various Lord of the Rings video games, and more. While the company is thus the sole authority on potential Gandalf, Aragorn, and so on movies, the new projects are likely to be fresh takes that aren't necessarily related to the characters or actors featured in the film trilogies. This is similar to the upcoming video game The Lord of the Rings Gollum, which features the familiar character in a version that appears to be based directly on the book's lore, rather than the film adaptation. Next, Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power Season 2 adds Witcher, Sandman directors. 3 Season 2 directors for The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power have been confirmed by Amazon, including those who have previously worked on The Witcher, The Sandman, and The Wheel of Time. Charlotte Brandstrom, who directed The Rings of Power Season 1, episodes Udun and The Eye, will direct 4 new episodes and serve as co-executive producer. Louise Hooper and Sanaa Hamri, the remaining 2 directors, will each direct 2 episodes. Brandstrom's previous work outside The Rings of Power includes directing the Bottled Appetites and Rare Species episodes of The Witcher Season 1. She has also worked on shows such as The Man in the High Castle, Outlander, and Madam Secretary. Finally, Hamri served as executive producer on Season 2 of The Wheel of Time, and as executive producer and director on Empire. She also directed Shameless, Nashville, Glee, and Desperate Housewives episodes. Along with new directors, Amazon has a slew of new cast members for The Rings of Power, including Gabriel Aquidike, Yasin Zaitz-Tour, Ben Daniels, Amelia Kenworthy, Nia Tell, and Nicholas Woodison. Adar, the Orc leader, has also been recast and will now be played by Sam Hazeldine, who previously played Joseph Maul. Season 2 of The Rings of Power is currently in production in the United Kingdom, with no release date yet. Moving on, Rings of Power Season 2, all-female directing team and episode count announced. Season 2 of The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power has revealed its episode count and all-female directing team. On September 1st, The Rings of Power debuted on Amazon, becoming the first live-action adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien's works since Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit trilogies. The series is loosely based on the appendices to Tolkien's The Return of the King and reconstructs the history of the Middle-earth Second Age. Amazon had already ordered Rings of Power Season 2 as part of its 5-season commitment to the show before Season 1 ended with high viewership and positive reviews. The Rings of Power Season 2 directing team and episode count have now been revealed. Season 1's primary directors were J.A. Bayona and Wayne Che-Yip, but Season 2 will feature an all-female directing team. Charlotte Brandstrom, who directed 2 episodes in Season 1, has been promoted to lead director. Sana Hamri and Louise Hooper, both newcomers to the franchise, will join her. Brandstrom will direct 4 episodes, while Hamri and Hooper will direct 2 each, confirming The Rings of Power Season 2 will have 8 episodes. Following that, everything we know about Rings of Power Season 2. Filming for The Rings of Power Season 2 is already underway. Amazon has begun to reveal some details about what to expect. Amazon recently announced that The Rings of Power Season 2 would add 8 new cast members to their already massive cast, confirming the episode count and directing crew. Oliver Alvin Wilson, Stuart Bowman, Gavi Singh Shera, William Chubb, Kevin Eldon, Will Keane, Selena Lowe, and Callum Lynch are the 8 new cast members. While Amazon has confirmed that these new faces will appear in Season 2, no information about their characters' identities has been released. In addition to the 8 new cast members, The Rings of Power Season 2 will see the return of a large portion of the first season's original cast. The only cast members who are not expected to return are the Mystics and Sadok Burrows, presumed dead by the end of The Rings of Power's first season. The role of Adar has been recast, so Joseph Mawle will not be returning. The Rings of Power Season 2 is currently in production, with no set release date. However, the season is likely to be released in early 2024. The Rings of Power is a large project with a large cast, and Season 1 left many different plot lines open to be explored. Next, Rings of Power's Galadriel showed how an elf could fall. The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, demonstrated how an elf could be defeated. J.R.R. Tolkien originally intended all orcs to be fallen elves. The concept even made it into his draft of the Silmarillion, published after his son Christopher's death. Yet this is held by the wise of Eressa. Silmarillion continues that all those of the Quendi that came into Melkor's hands, Ere Utumno, was broken, were put in prison, and by slow arts of cruelty were corrupted and enslaved. Thus did Melkor breed the hideous race of the orcs. Tolkien later dropped the idea, according to Christopher, because he wanted to emphasize the inherent nobility of elves. The Rings of Power thus deviated from canon by introducing Adar, a fallen elf Sauron had broken. Adar is an elvish word that most likely means father. The Amazon TV series depicted Adar as the orcs' creator. In an unexpected twist, it was revealed that Adar was acting independently of Sauron, with his agenda for the sake of the orcs he ruled. Naturally, this raises the troubling question of how an elf can fall. Moving on, Galadriel shows how an elf can fall in The Rings of Power. One memorable scene in The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, provides an answer to that question. Galadriel eventually realized she had been duped by Sauron, who had wormed his way into her trust under the guise of Halbrand. The first season of The Rings of Power concludes with a confrontation between the two, with Halbrand attempting to entice Galadriel to side with him. He offers Galadriel an alliance that will help her achieve her more noble goal, the restoration of Middle-earth, if she only agrees. Surprisingly, nothing Sauron says in this scene is a lie. Tolkien's notes do indeed record that Sauron was obsessed with restoring order and peace to Middle-earth during the Second Age, and that his desire eventually morphed into a twisted desire for power and control. Sauron is enticing Galadriel to follow in his footsteps. In The Rings of Power, Galadriel is greatly tempted. She considers Sauron's words carefully, as they are carefully chosen to appeal to her longing for peace and order. This, it appears, is how an elf can fall, by appealing to and thus perverting their noble desires. Fortunately, Galadriel resists the temptation, and Sauron places her in an enchanted sleep to prevent her from interfering with his business and avoiding the creation of the first ring. Following that, the Rings of Power make Sauron even more satanic. There are intriguing parallels between this depiction of Sauron and the devil in J.R.R. Tolkien's Catholic faith. Satan, or Lucifer, is a fallen angel. The Maiar are Tolkien mythology's equivalent of angels, and Sauron is a fallen Maiar. The Sauron of the Rings of Power, like Satan in the Garden of Eden, uses subtle temptation to sway others to his cause. On the other hand, Galadriel is Eve, who did not fall because she could resist Sauron's seductive words, no matter how appealing they were. As the Lord of the Rings of Power continues, she will undoubtedly be Sauron's most formidable foe. Next, the Rings of Power created a big Season 2 problem for Adar. Adar faces a significant challenge in Season 2 of the Rings of Power. The elf and proto-orc who led his children, the orcs, into the Southlands has found a home for them in Mordor, which has just been named and created. There was much speculation that Adar could be Sauron until the 6th episode of Season 1, when Adar claimed that he had killed Sauron. An antagonistic bond has been formed between the two, and a clash in Season 2 is unavoidable. Halbrand and Adar first met in Udun, the 6th episode of the Rings of Power. As Adar fled from the Númenóreans, Galadriel and Halbrand pursued him. After knocking him off his horse, Halbrand asked, "Do you remember me?" in an aggressive stance, with his lance pointed at Adar's throat. "No," Adar replied. This irritated Halbrand because it was apparent that he recognized Adar. This scene became more precise in the Season 1 finale, when Halbrand revealed to Galadriel that he was Sauron. A major conflict between Sauron and Adar has been set in motion. Finally, Sauron's return is bad for Adar. In Rings of Power Season 2, unknowingly, Adar paved the way for Sauron to rule over Mordor. His actions directly contributed to the transformation of the Southlands into Mordor, as well as the formation of Mount Doom. He did this to provide the orcs with a haven away from the light, as he had promised. Adar established himself as the land's ruler. Sauron was seen heading toward Mordor at the end of the Rings of Power's season finale. The issue here is that Adar and the orcs are already present and are not on his side. The arrival of Sauron in Mordor will be unwelcome.